Hello, everybody, and welcome to another My Music. Today, I'm going to be speaking to Will, who's coming all the way from America and the Deep South. The Deep South. Well, actually, not the deep, deep South, but just the South. Where are you, Will?
Atlanta, Georgia. So a little south. The dirty South, they call it over here.
The dirty South.
The dirty South.
You got to say that there. The dirty South. He's coming all the way from the dirty South. Will be here to talk to us all about his life in music so far, and bring us a little bit of soul straight after the Dancing Cat.
Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop.
Will, thank you so much for joining me. I
Absolutely.
love the background as well, by the way. So we've got some streaming going on there. Look at that.
I'm in my studio, so this is where, as they say, the magic happens. So I got some plaques there on the wall and just some commemorations of some of the work I've done.
Yeah. Look at that. What's that? 250,000? Is that 250,000?
250,000. That was from a couple of singles ago. Never Knew Love. That one's actually worldwide now. More than that. That plaque came about 2 years ago. So it's getting up there a little more. So I'm very proud of that one.
That's wonderful. And for people that don't know, your career started when?
Ooh, well, back in 2005 is when I'm dating myself now, but back in 2005 is when I released my debut project. It was called It's My Will. So that was, it'll be 21 years old this year. So
I know. Do you know what the crazy thing about that is? You say that, like, when people, for me, because I'm old, when people say like 2005, I'm still like, that's no time at all.
you're like, that's current.
That's like really current, right?
Right.
Because I grew up in the 70s, and the 80s were like my teenage years, and then was in a band in the early 90s, and then you suddenly think, oh wow, it's like these times are like 30, 40 years ago. It's not like
it's
yesterday.
lightning, man. It goes by so quickly. You look back and you think, how in the world could that have possibly been 20 years ago? Crazy.
Wow.
I don't feel much older,
You don't feel much older,
but I don't feel much older.
That's good. That's good. I mean, has a lot changed for you since you started this? I mean, the world of music and how music gets out there has changed drastically, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. And I just remember being, more youthful, and I would think that, going through my grandmother's record collection or looking at cassette tapes. I came along, cassette tapes were still in use, but they really started to fade out. I really grew up in the 80s. And so we started moving towards CDs. And so that was the thing. And now you basically, don't really have those anymore. So, but the world of music in general, how consumers receive it is different, but also how we, record and what we do. Things are so much different now than they used to be. And it's just been interesting, but yet wonderful evolution. So yeah, I have seen a lot of things. I've seen the way the industry has changed from making music to how we market music to how we present music, from retail shops. We could go buy physical products. They're no longer around. And just to be honest, I really miss those days and those types of institutions, because I think that they added a lot of value to the experience of enjoying music. For one, I used to enjoy, we have a big place here, it's called Tower Records. That was one. Yeah. And I used to go there every Tuesday. Back in the day was new music release day. And I'd go in there and I would spend hours, flipping through the Billboard magazine, listening on the listening station to all of the new music that had come out. And that was just wonderful to be able to do that. And, that's gone now. That's a memory.
I remember Tower Records when it was in London.
Yes.
I remember going to Tower Records, and I think it had like 3 or 4 floors in London. It was a big old building, full of vinyl and CDs and all those beautiful
Yes.
things. And
It was
yeah,
wonderful.
it was. And like every time I went in there, I'd try and like find something completely different. Were you always like that? Were you always like trying to, when you went to record shops or CD
Yeah.
shops, were you always trying to like maybe just branch out a little bit from what you've done before, or did you kind of stick in a lane?
Well, no, always, because I've always enjoyed such a vast array of sounds and music and people. Honestly, if you were to look at my CD collection, which I still have, is huge. I don't know why I'm still holding on to it, but you'd find all types of artists there and multiple genres. And so really, I would look at those Billboard magazines and I'd scan through all of the charts, and there would be people that I'd never heard of, but I'm like, okay, they're making some noise somewhere out here in the world. Let me figure out what this is all about. And so I would always enjoy listening to people I'd never heard of. And I think that really as an artist, it helped me because it allowed me to be able to bring in so many different sounds, even if they weren't directly found in my music. I feel like the influence was there just because of my awareness of some things. Maybe the end user would not have known that, I got this particular aspect from said artist, but I just think it just kind of helped shape and mold me, and really was just part of the fascination that I had with music anyway, was just discovering new people. So it was wonderful.
I always think this is one of the most interesting things that we talk about on this show, which is, so tell me, within that vast collection of things that you've got, right, what wouldn't we expect Will to have listened to in the past? Can you pick out any sort of like extreme ends of the spectrum
that you would not have expected me to?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably many of the country artists that I enjoy. I enjoy Randy Travis. I enjoy Loretta Lynn. I enjoy Conway Twitty. Just to name a few. There's Aerosmith in my collection. There's some Guns N' Roses in my collection.
Wow.
I enjoy
Loving an elevator.
Yeah, I mean, really, when I tell you, it's such a vast collection. Even some of your artists, I mean, Joss Stone, I've always been a big fan of her work. Yeah, so I mean, global, honestly, global.
Yeah. The thing is, right, there's within that though, like there's some big voices, right? So the voice has always been quite important to you in music.
That's interesting that you point that out, because I was always attracted to the voice, whether it was hard, tough singing or soft, beautiful singing. I've just always been attracted to the vocal aspects of music. And it's just, those are the artists that I tend to gravitate to more. And the voice is something that always stood out to me, especially people like Gladys Knight or Whitney Houston or Luther Vandross, or you have Michael Bublé and Frank Sinatra and Harry Connick Jr. Those nice tones. I love tones. Usher, Alicia Keys, like the tone is what gets me, because you can have wonderful technique and wonderful artistry, but the tone is the one thing that I feel like as a singer, that's your God-given thing. Like you can't change your tone. And I think that what endears me to a lot of people is their tone.
Well, you mentioned the name in there, and I'm going to come back to this, right? Because there is that 80s influence, soul influence, with the keyboards and those kind of lush sounds, and the great production, which is in your music as well, right?
Yep.
But people like Luther Vandross, I can remember like people fighting over Luther Vandross albums at school, right? But the one thing you mustn't miss from that time is like the outfits. Imagine like as of today, you've got to like do the shoulder pads and the fleck jacket and
it's a different time, and I think when you think about it, you name Luther, and he was really known for that type of extravagant type of stage presence, and I think people came to expect that from him, and so it became a part of the show. It became a part of the act, and you knew that you would get that from Luther. even back in the time when, you had Whitney Houston in the beautiful gowns and all of that kind of stuff, and people would just expect that, almost like an extension of the Diana Ross era, where you just expected it to be kind of over the top. And then things became a little more subtle, or we just adopted a different visual approach. But looking back on that, and you think, wow, you didn't think anything at the time. You didn't know any different. But looking back at old Luther concerts, or old Gerald Levert or Barry White or somebody, and you see the big shoulder pads and the dripping in rhinestones, and you think, wow, we wouldn't do that today. But I wonder how you would really stand out as an artist from the aesthetic side if you did that today. So I don't know, maybe I'll try that.
Oh, you have to get the wig as well, like you get your
all of that.
Hair standing right up on end, like that, completely vertical, etc.
Yes.
Now, listen, your name, Will Preston, right? That's an interesting one when you put that in the internet, right? You know this because you've done this yourself, right? Everybody's Googled themselves, because obviously, especially within soul, there's been quite a number of Wills, and there's also been quite a number of Prestons, right?
Yes.
So, like, has it been difficult, like, to get people to find you over the years? Do you know what I mean? Because you get Bill Preston come up, and then you get like people like Will Downing, and you get like, it's like,
right.
Yeah.
Who I love both of them, actually, Will Downing and Billy Preston. But the what I will say is that there's my music has never been mistaken for theirs, but like you said, sometimes it's hard to, or they'll think that they're reading about me and they're reading about Billy Preston. And they're like, well, I didn't know he was that old. And I'm like, I'm not. That's not me. And then, sometimes people will say, is that your father or is that your uncle? Or I'm like, no relation that I know of. But, I guess if I'm going to be mistaken for anybody out there, Billy Preston is a great one musically to be mistaken for. But no, I even see that myself. I'll be looking for, because believe it or not, I don't always have all of my music at my disposal at the ready. So I have to go online and pull something up really quickly. I'm trying to find an article and I'll put in Will Preston. And sometimes I have to be a little more specific, like Will Preston R&B or Will Preston independent R&B. And then I get a flood of things. But Billy Preston is going to always come up in my searches, no matter what I put on there as the keywords or the descriptors. Billy Preston is always also in there somewhere. So Willie Go Round in Circles is an unofficial song of mine that I don't get paid.
Absolutely. I was going to say, you're just waiting for that day when some interviewer goes, so your dad knew the Beatles. So
right. I was like, my dad did know the Beatles.
Yeah.
I probably could go with that storyline until they start asking about his musicianship. And then I'd have to say, well, actually, that's not my dad.
No. Were you from a musical family?
So yes and no. I have many members in my family who sing, many members who play instruments, but no one in my family embarked on the journey of having a career in music. So a lot of talent in my family, but no one in the vein of doing what I'm doing, although there are many who certainly could have.
Yeah. What about, I mean, because it's kind of like part of the sort of soul history as well, gospel, etc. Were you from quite a church-based family growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I grew up in the church. I still attend church, but church was a very important aspect of my youth and upbringing and adulthood. I can't imagine the world without it, without my faith and without that foundation. Growing up in church, it just is something that's natural to you to hear the music, to see the music, to witness the music, to move with the music. And so I get asked about it a lot, but it's something that just seems so intuitive to me that I never, even from a standpoint of giving it its proper credit and influence, many times we don't think about it because it was just something that was who we were and what we experienced.
Well, you'd be surprised. I mean, as we were talking about just before you came on with me, I've done a lot of these interviews, a lot, and you'd be surprised how many artists grew up in a church attending family. Right? It's not so common now.
Right.
But it was.
It was.
And you know, a lot of artists, even ones you really wouldn't have thought would have grown up in the church because of where they are now, you wouldn't have thought they grew up in church. But here's the thing, and we've had this conversation before, some church songs are really hard to sing. It is a great foundation, right? Two things with that. One, some of those songs, you know, they shift key really, you know, in strange ways, and they're quite difficult to sing. Technically, they're quite difficult to sing. And also, there's always one person in church who can't sing, right? And you have to be able to sing and keep in tune whilst listening to that person that can't sing. It's true though, isn't it?
It's so true because you hear. I'm thinking back, you know, we had it's funny. We had, you know, some wonderful singers in that church, and we had singers who just loved to sing. I'll say it that way. And they would get up there and they would pour their heart out. But you know, the great thing about that, even still, is so much of soul music and R&B music and even elements of pop music today, it's about the feeling. And so you're much more forgiving of that because the feeling is there, and it could still make you feel like the spirit could move in church, and it wouldn't have to be the greatest singer in the world, but it's about the feeling and the passion behind it. You know, they aren't stressing about hitting the right note. They're just flowing and they're just going with the music.
Correct.
That's what it evokes, that sentiment that gets you like to the point where you just want to, you know, get up and have a good time. But back to your earlier point about, you know, what the church teaches you in music. I mean, yeah, it teaches you so much about singing, like you say, key changes and tempo changes, and you know, all those things that just you don't know are preparing you, but they prepare you for so many other avenues and genres of music because you've done it all. And it's something that might be a very hard piece of music for someone who hasn't been exposed to that, becomes, you know, less challenging for someone who grew up in church and even hearing, you know, gospel music, and certainly if you were, you know, part of singing it while growing up.
No, absolutely. Who's taught you most in your musical journey? Who's the one person that like gave you a piece of advice along the way, or
I've had so much advice from so many people. I would say collectively, the biggest, I'm trying to think of a single person, but there've been so many who told me this, but I would say collectively, the biggest piece of advice that I've had was always be yourself. Don't chase trends. And I think that has been something that has worked for me because I've never sought to chase a trend, because being a songwriter also, you want to write from, you know, just divine inspiration, just to be able to sit down and write, and not sit down and write and say, okay, I'm trying to get the next Justin Bieber song, or I'm trying to get the next, you know, Jay-Z song or Usher song, or you have to put that out of your mind and just continue to be yourself always. And that's the one thing that I know for sure that I have held fast to and strong to, because I don't think I can be anybody else, and I don't think anybody can be a better me. So I think that it's about staying true to who you are as an artist, and just never losing sight of that, and don't chase trends, because, you know, you find your own audience, and I do music and it finds the audience, and people latch on because of the originality of it, and because I'm not trying to be someone else. So that's the biggest piece of advice I think that I've received.
Well, it's sensible advice. Do you think like a lot of young musicians kind of fall foul to that though these days? That they're literally kind of, you know, they understand that this is a business. You know, I that's the one thing that I do worry about with like how a lot of young people get into this. They're almost taught like this is a business first before it's an art, if you know what I mean. Yeah,
well, and I think that people see glitz and glamour, and they don't see the years 20 plus. They don't see the years that go into it. They don't see the blood, sweat, and tears that people who have a passion call for this do. A lot of the younger people, and you know, we all were at that point probably, whether it was a long-lasting thing or something that just kind of came and went, but you get caught up in the fascination of what you want the end to be, and you don't want to put in the work to get there. And so you want that instant gratification. So I do think that a lot of artists today, come into it with really they might have an idea of the business, but they don't know the business. And they don't often take the time to really research and understand the business because they feel that that's not what they need to do, that all they need to worry about is being creative. But especially if you're trying to be on the independent side, in which I'll always be an encourager of that. It's you have to truly know the business, understand the business, because otherwise they'll eat you up. They will eat you up. They'll make bad deals. They'll take your money. And so it's very important to understand the business. But I think you really have to be rooted in why you're doing this. And if you're doing it for anything other than passion, I just feel like it comes across as disingenuous. And eventually, I think that people latch onto that and they understand when they see a genuine artist versus someone who is, not as heavily invested mentally, emotionally, and they just see it for the shining bright lights.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Is there a kind of piece of music that you haven't pursued yet or been able to do yet for any particular reason that you would love before your career is out to be able to do? I mean, for example, we sometimes when we talk to people in the past, they go, I'd just love to do a whole orchestra piece or, a big band piece, or what? Is there anything like that for you?
Well, yeah, that's one of my things is to do, and this is more so from a live performance standpoint, but I really want to perform with a huge orchestra, like the one of the big symphonies. So that's always been a dream of mine, and that will happen. But I think from a standpoint of recording, I would love to do. I'm big on like mashups and merging genres. So I would love to do R&B country album. I would love to do a rock album with a soulful edge. I've always had this feeling that, taking some, Aerosmith songs, let's just say, although they're already great, and some of those to me are very soulful anyway, but just putting that R&B spin on some of that music. You want to do the next Walk This Way, right? I would love to do that. That would be awesome to put my stamp and my spin on it, because I'm not a hard singer in the way that Liv Tyler or some of the other ones are, but I think that I can bring that soulfulness to it. So I would love to do that, and even like I said, country, because what endears me to country music, it's more from the songwriting perspective. I think country songs have some of the most amazing stories. And then you just wouldn't find those stories in any other genre of music. And so there's a great deal of thought and processing mentally that goes into writing country songs. And have always been fascinated by that. And a lot of that, for the country artists is the artist, it's autobiographical. I'm thinking about, I mentioned earlier that I'd been at Loretta Lynn. So I've gone to see Loretta Lynn in concert when, of course, she was living. And, I just remember her song, like Coal Miner's Daughter, that they just evoke certain feelings and certain things. Randy Travis, Amen. It's just so many of those songs that, I just love the lyric. And then, vocally, I enjoy the artist as well.
Is there a sort of younger country artist? Because there's a lot at the moment. Is there a younger sort of country artist with a great voice that is on your radar? You think, well, hello, if we could get them on there now, do a bit of a duet. So is there anyone we could bring into the fold?
I mean, I love Billy Carrington. I love his music. He's honestly one of my favorites. Jason Aldean is one of my favorites. I would say those two are definitely they're two of my favorites. Billy Carrington, though, is certainly one of my favorites. Tony Evans Jr., man, he is phenomenal. Now, so you should check him out. If you've never heard of him, he's an African-American country artist, which is already rare. And his voice is he has this rich baritone that is just so amazing. And he's really starting to make waves. But Tony Evans Jr., man, he is a phenomenal artist. And he's like here in Atlanta somewhere. I think he's from a little further south in Georgia, but I believe that he resides somewhere in Atlanta. So I got to catch up with that brother because he's amazing, and we have to work together.
Well, we'll just tag him in, you see, when this goes out. That's
yeah,
the
tag
simple
him
thing.
in. Tony Evans
Right.
Jr.
Tony, if you're watching, we're just going to try and make this happen, you know.
Put it out.
And one of the other things that I'm really trying to encourage some artists of today to do as well is create a new Christmas song. I mean, because like Christmas songs, like they seem to all be like all of the good Christmas songs seem to be like stuck in a period there, and like nothing better's happened since, you know. So
Yeah.
perhaps you could do a Christmas song with Tony. That'd be great.
That would be good. And I had the great pleasure of doing a Christmas song a couple of years ago with American Idol artist Vincent Powell. He wasn't the winner of a season, but he advanced pretty far in a season here in the U.S. and a brilliant singer. And we did a Christmas record a couple of years ago called This Time of Year. So, Christmas songs are just one of those, they feel good. You record it in like, I don't know, June, July. So you get all in that mood in the recording session, and then you say, oh, well, it felt like Christmas. Now we got to put it on the shelf until, we can pull it out in November for the season. And, but so I love Christmas music. And I always say that I don't know if I'll ever do a full on Christmas project album. Maybe I would love to, but certainly I look forward to doing more songs and more singles over the years. So maybe you just put something out there and it might come to fruition.
Come on, if Michael Bublé phoned you up tomorrow and said, let's do a Christmas album, no one would say no, would they?
Oh, no one would say no to Michael Bublé for anything.
I mean, Michael Bublé is Mr. Christmas anyway.
Yes, he is. He is.
It's just every year the Michael Bublé album comes out. It's
every
just like
year.
It's the same as hanging things on the Christmas tree. You get the baubles out, you get the lights out, you get the Bublé out. It's one of those things.
And I don't know if it was this year or last year when he and Dolly Parton did the Christmas song together. That was wonderful. That was a nice bridging of genres and also eras. So, he did a wonderful thing there.
He did a wonderful thing. If you could give sort of any message out there to people listening to this in terms of like why they should just spend a little bit of time sort of investigating music properly rather than just like doing this on their phone, and listening to 20 seconds. What's the message that you would give people?
Well, I would give people what I would say, and I say it all the time, is, we live in this musical reality now where people love singles. When I do a project, the project is a concept and it's from beginning to end. And not even saying that you're going to 100% enjoy every song the same. Like it might be one or two that you love, might be one or two that you like. But the thing about it is when artists create, they create with something in mind. They build on something. And so I really feel like unless you've sat down and listened to a project from song 1 to song 12 or whatever it is, you kind of miss something in the process. So, I mean, yeah, you can pick out an individual song and it'll be good to you. But to understand the full scope of the project, I have a new project coming out in May. It's called Erratic Heartbeats. It's from top to bottom. There's a concept there. And there's like, I want you to feel that. I want you to feel the ride and feel the journey. So I think that would be my message, because you don't realize you're missing out on it. It's almost like you don't know that you're missing out on anything, but I guarantee you that your experience will be enriched if you just sit down and listen to that artist, just listen through the project one full time through, and you'll see something differently than through the lens of just viewing it with a single. But the attention span is so small and short these days. And it's like, if the hook isn't presented immediately up front before the verses, it seems like people want to scroll. But, and that's what I do miss about music, because it was always a build. You'd build to a climax, and now it's almost like the listener wants the climax in the beginning. But take your time, enjoy the music. It's a ride. It's a journey. It's not meant to be consumed in quickly and in a hurry.
I think even artists that really understand the sort of modern culture and are really astute with that long for people to listen to the whole piece. Mm-hmm. I think I think I'm seeing that in what people are doing. I mean, even if you take like Charlie XCX, who is one of those people who really understands like the 20-second hook, catch, whatever, right? Her latest project is she wanted to do a soundtrack for a film, right? Because she wanted people to listen to a whole soundtrack that added into a piece of visual art. Yeah, I think every artist really wants people to invest more than that 20 seconds, but it's so difficult. I think you just have to keep finding creative ways of getting people to slow down, you know, right? Because we all need to slow down a bit.
We all need to slow down. Life is such a rush today for all things, but when it comes to the music, I want you to enjoy the music. I don't know. Sometimes it's interesting. It's not, I guess it's not for the world to really admire or be amused by, but there's so much work that goes into bringing not just a song, but a project to the marketplace. I think people don't often realize what artists go through to get, you know, from concept to completion. Sometimes it's years to get from the concept to the marketplace. And you just want people to enjoy that. You want people to, you know, to savor that and to understand that. But, you know, I guess that's the artist in me talking, and not everybody, you know, some people just want like you want a piece of steak. You don't care about how it got here. You don't want to hear about the cow being slaughtered. So it's one of those things.
I'm going to say this though. Isn't that one of the great things about soul music? Isn't one of the great things about soul music, and it's always been there, is that it does slow us down. It intends us to listen. It literally oozes out like, listen to me. Right. Even going back to like the 80s and whatever, and when Whitney came out with, you know, saving all my, it's slow, it's seductive.
You know your history, man.
Right. Yeah. But
she stopped us. You're right. I mean, it stopped us in our tracks, because I think people, you know, subconsciously long for that. I mean, they long for those moments, or maybe it's so rare, but when it comes, it grabs you and it kind of just like arrests your ears and it arrests your whole presence. And you have to stop, you have to pause, and you have to listen, even if you're used to being in a hurry, and even if you want to be on that spinning wheel. You know, music has a way, and soul music in general has a way of just grabbing you and just making you just kind of listen, even if for a second, but it forces you to slow down. It does. It really does.
Yeah. What's going on?
What's going on? Marvin Gaye. That's right.
You know, Marvin said it, folks. Just slow down.
Slow down.
Just, you know, put all of that fighting away. Just slow down.
Well, we need to hear that today. With everything going on in the world.
That album is probably as relevant today as it ever was, right? You know?
Yeah, you asked me about, you know, music that I would do that I haven't ventured into, and not from a genre perspective, but I've never really been political. I don't think I've been political at all in any of my music, but you know, I feel something sometimes that makes me want to I've written things, but I haven't you know, released and fully produced anything, but it makes you really want to sit down and write about that stuff. You know, love is my lane. I know that, but there's a lot to say. You know, but then as an artist, you know, you always try to balance, you know, how much to get involved with the dealings of the world. And, you know, people have different views and perspectives. And so you try to, you know, you try to keep it PC and keep it moving. But there's a lot to be said about what's going on in the world today. And, you know, maybe some of my music will ultimately get a little more political, somewhat.
Maybe.
Continue to move through this journey.
Hey, that maybe that's an old man thing, right?
Yeah, maybe so. They'll be like, okay, I know he's near the end. He's not singing about love anymore. Now he's singing about all this other stuff.
I've given up now. I'm going to tell you it as I've given you love all my entire career and my entire life. Right now, I'm going to tell you it how it is. Right?
Yes.
You know. But then you will have made it to there, so you'll feel like you've You've paid
Earned
your
it.
dues. You've earned it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Will, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Thank you for uncovering and, talking to us a little bit about your music. What would you love people, if they go to now to listen to one song of yours, which is what we're going to put, if you're listening to this on Spotify, the beautiful thing about Spotify is that we can then put that directly underneath this video. So you can take your thumb from there, move it to there. It really requires very little effort at all. Press with your thumb, and now you're listening to Will. So what song are we putting directly underneath you?
Ooh, you want me to pick one song, Graham?
Yeah. That will just start the journey, right?
Okay. All right. Let's do Never Knew Love. I was going to say Candy Coated Raindrops. I'll just drop that name while we're talking, and then they can find that on their own. But put Never Knew Love. Never Knew Love. Never Knew Love.
That's a beautiful, beautiful song. Never Knew Love. I'm writing it down so I remember to put that in when I do the post-production on this.
And I have a new project coming out, like I said, in May, called Erratic Heartbeat. So I'm looking forward to that. And a new single releasing in a couple of weeks, March 27th, called Don't Like Falling in Love. So there's a lot of music out there to hear, but there's some new music coming too, and I'm excited about that. So there's a lot of Will Preston to discover for people who don't know who I am.
There you go. Erratic Heartbeat. And there will be maybe an interesting campaign for that as well, where
working on it now, so
Will goes out to every defibrillator in the land and puts a copy of the album there, so that
that's right and then keep pushing. And the great thing about being an independent artist is that you feel like almost every release it feels like you're a new artist, because you have new discoveries and people just are always discovering my music. So I am just so grateful for that. And people are always like, where have you been? I've been here 20 years. I've been here. It's just wonderful that the fans just keep growing and growing and growing. And so, I wouldn't take anything for the journey.
I always enjoy those conversations with artists because, at the point where people like deliver a new project or whatever, that project's, been in the can or has been in production for like a long time or whatever. Yeah. And then by the time it's like, you talk to people like me and they go, also you've got new music, but in your head, it's like, well, when you say new, it's been like, it's kind of old to me now. And I'm kind of now onto this over here.
Onto something else that you'll hear in 2 years.
but yeah, it's new to everyone. There we go.
That's right. That's how it goes.
So you'll be able to listen to Will's new old project very shortly. So keep an eye on that, folks. This has been the wonderful Will Preston, ladies and gentlemen. Do press the button below if you're watching this on Spotify. Add to a playlist. Then, because of the way that these wonderful computer systems work these days, it will then go and find some more songs of Will's and add a few more in there as well. And, and before you know it, you're being completely addicted to love with Will, to name a great song. And you can go and enjoy it forever and ever. We will, of course, be, as we said earlier, we will, of course, be mentioning Tony Evans Jr. as well when this podcast goes out. And Tony, if you're watching this, do get in touch with Will. Okay, we'd love that to happen. Okay?
Absolutely, Tony. Waiting on your call.
Yeah. The wonderful Will Preston, everybody. And thank you, as ever, for spending a bit of time to actually listen to somebody talk about their passion and their projects and why they're making this music for you. It doesn't appear from the little munchkins that live in the box in the corner of the room. Artists actually have to write this stuff. They go into studios. They record this stuff. It actually costs money. So as we always say on here, if you see an artist, support them. Buy them a coffee if you see them in the street. If you see them in the supermarket, buy their groceries for them. If they put stuff out online, buy it. Don't just stream it, buy it, right? Because all of that makes a big difference. We'll be back soon with more music for you. But until then, from Will and myself, bye for now.